All right, everybody, we are going to go ahead and get started. I think we might have a couple more people filter in, which is fine. I want to say welcome. We're going to start off with some introductions. My name is Alyssa Austin, and I am the Director of Travel and Service Programs here at Beckett Chimney Corners.
And my name is Becky McCluskey, and I work as the Assistant Director with Travel and Service Programs.
And we're also very excited to be joined by some NOLS staff, so we'll let you all introduce yourselves as well.
Hi, go ahead, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Annarella. I am an account manager at NOLS Custom Education. So I work with Alyssa and Becky to design and implement this program.
And I'm Ashley Wise. I'm up in Knowles, Alaska. It's my 8th season as the program manager.
I'm Catherine Wheeler, and I'm the operations coordinator here in Wyoming.
Great, thank you. And I just want to orient you all to the screen. So you should be able to see our slideshow. So it just says Beckett Chimney Corners, YMCA, Knowles, Alaska. And then over on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a place that's called a chat box. This is where you are going to be able to enter your questions if you have any at the end of the presentation. We do ask that you wait until we go through all the information before asking any questions. We won't be answering them throughout it just because we have a lot to cover tonight, but we'll definitely leave some room for you all to ask questions at the end. I also want to point out that you should be able to hear us, but not each other. So we'd really appreciate it if you all can keep your microphones muted for us, just so that you don't get a lot of feedback on the presentation here. So in terms of our agenda, the first part of our webinar tonight is really going to be general information about the NOLS program, including just what the general goals are, how to prepare for the program, a little bit about your NOLS account, and then we're going to get into the specifics, so you'll learn a lot more about your route and just really what to expect like once you're out there. And then we're going to wrap it up with what we call the nuts and bolts. This is the logistics of the program, and we'll answer a lot of your questions about packing, how to prepare physically for the program, and a whole lot more.
So leading up to the summer, there's a lot of paperwork that we're asking you all to complete, and it's important to know that there are actually 2 places families need to go to complete their paperwork. So the NOLS dashboard is the most important one, and at this point, everyone is registered and should have access to that NOLS dashboard. And that's extremely important to spend some time just looking at the different information there, because it has a lot of really helpful information about your program and the NOLS course, including a packing list. The NOLS dashboard is also where you will go to complete a variety of different forms. So that's things like the NOLS health form, the student agreement form, the parent and or guardian information form, your emergency contacts. It's also where you'll go to pay your $300 equipment deposit. And so on that NOLS dashboard, it also has contact information for Catherine, who's joining us tonight. So as you're looking at that info, if you have any questions, if you're not sure about what type of boots are the right boots to bring, you can give Catherine a call and she can help you out with that. The second place where families need to go to complete paperwork is your BCCYMCA online account. And the reason you need to go to both places is because we're not able to share certain forms. And so that's why you'll see on your camp account, we also ask you to upload a copy of your NOLS health form as well as your insurance card information. Again, because both NOLS and camp need that info. So on your camp account, in addition to that NOLS health form, we also ask families to complete a participant questionnaire and a parent questionnaire. Then there's also a BCCYMCA health authorization form for families to fill out. On your camp account, as well as your NOLS dashboard, please make sure you have the correct contact information for yourselves. As we get closer to the summer here at camp, we'll continue to reach out to families via email, and we want to make sure that we have the correct information to get in touch with you. And for both of these accounts, again, if you have any questions, if it's related to the NOLS paperwork, please reach out to NOLS directly. And if it's connected to the camp paperwork, please be in touch with us here at camp. So there are a number of different tasks we ask families to stay on top of leading up to the summer. So as I mentioned before, the most important one is just making sure that you're keeping up with paperwork and that you're finishing up your payments. Also make sure you're staying on top of that NOLS health form because that needs to be filled out with your physician. And then we want you researching your destination. So the best way to do that is to go onto the NOLS dashboard and just read more about NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, and information there. As it gets closer to the summer, we're going to be in touch with families via email to pass along your flight itinerary, to give you information about your Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA leader. I can tell you right now it's a woman named Amy Coburn. So we'll be sending you her staff bio shortly. And we'll also be emailing you reminders about how your check-in day will work and when it is. In addition to that, Amy, your trip leader from camp, will be giving you a call in June while she's here for staff training just to introduce herself to you quickly and see if you have any last-minute questions before you come out to camp.
So this is the second year that we are offering a NOLS Alaska program, and we are very excited to do so. This is an advanced leadership program. So as you all know, it's for participants that are finishing the 10th grade, so are a little bit older and a bit more mature. These programs have 3 core areas, which are developing outdoor skills. Again, as I mentioned, it's advanced leadership development and then also environmental learning. And as we get into the specifics of the slideshow, you'll learn a lot more about these areas.
So leading up to and during the summer itself, we have responsibilities that we ask parents to take on to help prepare both you and your child for their NOLS experience. And so again, researching your trip, we send out a parent guide that has information from Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA, and then as well as visiting or reading information on the NOLS dashboard. We ask that if your child has any medical or behavioral needs, that you reach out to us and let us know about that now, and also how you help to manage those needs at home. We'll take that information and we'll pass it along to NOLS as well as to our Beckett Chimney Corners leader. And she'll just use that to try to help foster a more successful summer for your child. This program is really an amazing opportunity to help young people learn about themselves and grow tremendously as leaders. And so we just encourage parents to remember to give your son or daughter the space that they need to really be fully immersed in this program and to have this unique experience. For parents, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us earlier rather than later. And while your child is on their program in the summer, parents sometimes ask about this. It's okay for you to go on a vacation of your own, but it's important to know that we must be able to reach you by phone and email.
Great. And just as parents have responsibilities, of course, our participants do as well. As I mentioned, this is an advanced leadership program, and you really do play an active role in the experience that you and your group will have on the trip. We expect you to really fully engage in the program and also with your group. These programs are very challenging at times, and we really want you to embrace the ups and the downs and really just try to get the most out of each part of it. We want you to look out for each other and check in and really just speak up if you feel like somebody is not doing well. And in addition to that, we also want you to practice self-care, which you're going to learn a lot about once you get out to Alaska and meet your NOLS instructors. You're going to be traveling in some pretty remote locations, and it's really important to pay attention to your needs, including things like hydration and hygiene and healthy eating. If you feel like your needs are not getting met or you're feeling a little bit off, it's really important that you talk to your trip leader or the NOLS instructors because they can only be helpful if you're speaking up. You're going to be required to keep track of your things, just as a lot of you experienced on your ISEP, YAS, or TLS programs in the past. You're in charge of your own personal gear, and as you're going to find out in these programs, gear is very, very important and not easily replaced, and we'll get into that a little bit later. We also expect you to be stepping outside of your comfort zone. As I mentioned, these programs can be really challenging. You're going to be having a lot of new experiences that can be both physically and mentally challenging. So we really want you to think about that and just embrace that part of the program. And of course, not last but certainly not least, just remember that you are representing Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA, and of course doing that in a positive manner.
So now we're going to move into the section of the presentation where we'll talk about the NOLS course in a bit more detail. And so I'm actually going to pass the presentation now over to the NOLS staff that we have with us tonight. So Sarah and Ashley and Catherine will pass it over to you to give us more details on the course.
Great. This is Ashley. I'm up in Palmer, Alaska, which is actually on this slide, kind of in the lower center, and that's where our location is. And yeah, the arrow is being pointed around to where Palmer is. And this Nelchina public use area, where you can see a snow patch kind of north of Palmer, the route that we planned for you all is a horseshoe route going into those mountains, kind of right below where there's snow, and then coming out to the east. And yeah, I'm really excited about this route. It's one that we do every season, and really a lot of these photos are from that route, so we'll talk about it as we move through.
This is Sarah. Students are often wondering about, like, what does a typical day look like? Is there an itinerary for every day? The way that we plan these courses are as a full 21-day expedition. And where you guys camp each night is basically determined by the course, how fast you're moving, and what the desires of the students and the instructor teams are. So the way that we structure it is that the course is 21 days long, and the first and the last day you're mostly at our base in Palmer, getting ready and then getting ready to go home. And then there are 2 resupplies of food and fuel during your course, and those are both by airplane, so either float plane or bush plane. And what we say is you have to get from point A to your re-ration, and you have like 6 days to get there. And then the course plans those 6 days. And where you camp along the way is determined by weather, how the group is doing, and other environmental factors. So you guys will fly from Massachusetts, and you'll arrive in Anchorage on June 27th. You'll spend the night at a bed and breakfast called the House of Jade. NOLS works a lot with the House of Jade. They understand NOLS students. They understand how much you want to eat for breakfast, all of those things. You'll spend the night there, and then NOLS will pick you up the next morning at the House of Jade and bring you to our campus in Palmer, which is about a 45-minute to hour-long drive.
And this day 1 slide is a great indicator of what it looks like at our farm. We have a 40-acre location in Palmer, an active farm. And these bays, you can see where the tents are down the hill there. Each group and your group will have one of those bays where you can divide out your gear. You'll get here about 8 in the morning and get a little tour, and then your instructors will line out your gear in one of these bays, and you'll be setting up tents. You'll be getting your equipment for the course and packing your ration, and it basically is all day. And you will have lunch in between, and then a 6 o'clock dinner, and get more orientation that evening. But it's a nice day to get prepped, and it doesn't always look this sunny here, but it's a good photo indicator. Yeah, I really appreciate this slide, the weather and terrain. I think these are from last year's Beckett Chimney course. So you do start out on what we call the ATV roads. A lot of trails in Alaska start with those, and then the terrain gets so rugged that these vehicles aren't able to continue, and that's great. You know, it's usually about 1.5 days of ATV travel on each end of the course, and then you're up in those higher mountains. But it can definitely be rugged terrain. If you're looking up on the horizon there, and some of these future slides will show it. Definitely wet, and students are wearing, well, the gaiters, like the full-length gaiters that you might associate with snow, but they're really nice for keeping mud out of your boots. It's usually pretty buggy, but that one looks like not too buggy right there. And lots of map reading happening because there's a lot of areas where there's not trails and you're just figuring out the route, looking at the terrain features. The temperatures can vary quite a bit. Lows can get down to around 40 and highs up around 75 or 80. So we have to pack for these huge fluctuations in temperature. The wildlife, yeah, they've got some caribou horns there, but that's, that sometimes courses actually have seen herds of caribou in this area, which is pretty impressive. You do see quite a bit of moose when you start out, and there are brown bears, which is the grizzly bear, and there's some black bears in the area, so we camp according to that. But you'll see lots of signs of wildlife, lots of tracks, but it makes it pretty special environment up there. And we will be, sorry, along this slide, we'll be taking quite a bit of precaution with safety in bear country. Even going to the bathroom has to be in groups of 4 and making lots of noise while you're traveling. And each student is going to be trained with how to use a bear spray, which is just a large can of pepper spray that can shoot up to 30 feet. And we'll practice that at our location before we head in the field. But you'll be spending, there's not a lot of solo time out there because of wildlife safety. Basically, is the more noise and size you can be as a group is a deterrent from animals getting close. Cooking and hiking groups, folks definitely have questions on how does this work at NOLS. We have what's called a NOLS cookery, which is a little cookbook that is designed around the rations that we bring, which are bulk rations in pound bags. And so you have your little duffel bag of rations with your cook group, which is about 3 to 4 students. And you say, okay, what do we want to cook tonight, and who's cooking? And they pull out the cookery and they look at their dry ingredients, and you get a lot of coaching from your instructors, because it's not easy to work with these whisper light stoves that are in the photo here, and make sure you don't burn things. But pancakes are a hit. Pizza at night is certainly a hit. Lots of mac and cheese. And so you do eat very well out there, and you're cooking a lot of your snacks, maybe in the morning or at dinner, that you then carry over with you during the day for your trail food. So we don't stop necessarily for a lunch, but you're eating throughout the day with the snacks that you've either cooked or that we do have trail mixes that come along. And hiking groups, this group of 7 students and 2 instructors, you'll be divided into 2 hiking groups. So you're always in a group of 4, and it's really nice. It makes the travel days more personal in that smaller group, and you'll kind of rotate around who you're hiking with each day. And you can pick whichever route you're saying, like Sarah is saying, like to get to the X is what we call your campsite that next night. So lots of potential for independent travel, and then you all meet up again at night. Yeah, a good question that folks have is, how are you bathing out there? How do you take care of yourself, cleaning? Hygiene is really important. Certainly if people getting sick, it's often because they haven't washed their hands properly. So the trick is that you can't wash your hands in these pristine streams. You're bringing a pot of water usually and going away from that stream, and you've got, each person has a little bottle of soap, and we're always washing our hands. Bathing is just tough to do. It's usually cold and there's not much appetite for full-on bathing out there, but you can wash yourself, away from these streams. And I would say folks might do that once a week out there. Yeah, that's about it on how hygiene.
This is Sarah. like Ashley mentioned earlier, what we're teaching on these courses is primarily leadership. We use expeditions as the way to teach it and sort of our venue and our classroom. But at our core, NOLS believes that everyone can be a leader and that leadership skills can be improved through training and practice. And we use what we call the 4-7-1 model, that there are 4 leadership roles, 7 leadership skills, and that everyone has a signature style of how they implement them. If anyone wants a copy of our curriculum pre-course, just connect with Catherine and we can send you one. And what people have told us, students have told us we're good at, is breaking down our leadership curriculum and showing you how to do it. So we teach that leadership is everywhere and always. It's how you wake up in the morning, it's how you treat your tent mates, it's how you communicate about the weather. And we give students an immense amount of time and opportunities to take official and unofficial leadership roles. And we provide near constant feedback and coaching, and we teach them to give peer feedback to each other. To a lot of students coming in, leadership is sort of a mystery, and you either have it or you don't. And we will give these students concrete tools and skills to lead that are transferable to any environment. Parents often ask what makes a successful NOLS student, and many think that physical strength is number one, and it's definitely not number one. Attitude and effort are 90% of your success on your NOLS course. That doesn't mean that if you're out of shape, you should just be like, great, I don't have to do anything. But we foster a growth mindset that values effort and process over results. We value mistakes as part of the experiential learning process. But if you're looking for ways to be successful on your NOLS course, being organized, being kind, being willing and thoughtful, and having good self-care are huge. And being in shape helps.
Yeah, I really like this photo, typical day on the trail. This, I think, is from last year as well. I first noticed really well packed backpacks, nice and tight. You are, as I said, most often not on trail and just trying to pick a route. And you can see they're eyeing what's the best way to get across this drainage down below. And there's steep terrain around them. You're always sort of walking on this, we call it hummocky, sort of tussock. It feels like you're walking on sponges. And so very challenging. A lot of folks prefer trekking poles. It looks like a couple of people are using trekking poles in that photo just for that support. And like we said, your group is picking an X for the next day, working towards that 6-day or 7-day re-ration. And you might think that 3 miles is not that far, but in this terrain it is. And so these days are long. They're really physically challenging because you're moving up and down quite a bit of elevation to get to your next point. And sometimes you get shut down in a steep drainage and you have to backtrack and work around. And the instructors will let you figure that out often. You know, they're there for support, but the part that we're talking about with leadership is really trying to make these hard decisions and lead your peers. So one of you will be the leader of the day, and doesn't mean you're doing everything, but you're sort of the overseer, and maybe you have somebody helping with timekeeping and map reading, and the whole group should be helping you with that. But you'll all be practicing as that, voice of the day, and then you'll be practicing as that active follower of the day. But yeah, this is a really good indication of what it's like out there.
Great, so now we're going to move into the third and final part of the presentation tonight, where we'll talk a little bit more about some of the logistics connected to the NOLS course. So first up is packing and gear. And so I know, I think it was Ashley mentioned before, when you get to the NOLS headquarters, there's an area where you can spread out all your gear, and you can see in this photo just what that looks like. So when it comes to packing for your NOLS course, you want to look on the NOLS dashboard under Prepare Your Gear. there's a really wonderful comprehensive list that talks about all of the many different layers and gear items that you need to make sure you're bringing with you on the program. On that list, there's a few things I want to point out and I'll talk about in more detail. You want to take note of any items that say that you can rent them from gear or from NOLS. And also with all of the clothing items, please make sure you're paying close attention to the type of fabric that it recommends bringing, because the type of fabric that you use and that you bring along can make a really big difference when you're out on the trail. So when it comes to getting your gear together for the course, the first step is just taking a look at what you already own or items that you might be able to borrow from close friends or family members. If you have items and you're not sure if it's quite the right thing, bring it with you on the program. And then once you get to the NOLS headquarters, like you see in this picture, you'll take time going through the gear that you brought with your NOLS instructors, and they can let you know if that item will work or not. If you don't already own items, I really recommend renting items from NOLS as like your second step in the process. And so again, on that packing list, take a close look because it lists items that are possible for you to rent. And I highly recommend this for larger expense items like rain gear, insulated jackets, backpacking backpacks, those kind of items. And this is where your $300 gear deposit comes into play. So everyone is required to make the $300 gear deposit just because having the right gear is vital on the course itself. And so the way that works is once you're at the NOLS headquarters, they have an outfitting department. And while you're there, you can rent certain items from NOLS. And that's, I think, a really great way to go, just because then you know that it's the right type of gear for the course that you're on. And it also gives you a chance to test out an item before fully committing to potentially a very expensive backpack per se. What's also nice is at the end of your program, if you really liked that item, you can purchase it from NOLS and your deposit goes towards that payment. So a third option for getting gear is to go out and buy items on your own before the course begins. NOLS highly recommends saving receipts for any of those purchases because it's possible sometimes that participants will buy an item and then it turns out you don't actually need it for your course. So save those receipts. And one thing that is really important to know and to keep in mind with any of the items that you bring with you on your course is that they will experience a lot of wear and tear. So by the end of the course, all the items that you bring will definitely be probably very muddy and probably very sweaty and very well worn. So just keep that in mind. As you can imagine, having the proper hiking boots is also extremely important on the course. And so on the NOLS dashboard, there's a boot fitting guide that can give you more details about what to look for. But you can also give Catherine a call and if you have any specific questions or even when you're at a store checking out different hiking boot options. When it comes to the course, we also recommend that everybody bring 2 spare sets of clean clothes, and I can explain this a little bit more. So one clean set of clothes is nice to have that you can leave behind here at camp. We recommend that you bring an extra bag with you, a small duffel bag, so that at the end of your course, when you return to camp, you have a clean set of clothes here waiting for you. We also recommend or I just want to remind everybody to also make sure that you have bedding for your time while you're here at camp. So if you like to have a fitted sheet, please bring that with you. That second pair of clean clothes, you'll bring with you out to Alaska, and then you can leave here at the NOLS headquarters. And that's for at the very end of your course, once everything's done and wrapped up, and you've had a chance to maybe take a shower. It's always nice to be able to put on clean clothes and to have that clean pair of clothes to travel in on your way back to the East Coast. So one set of clothes to leave here at camp and one set of clean clothes to leave out at the NOLS headquarters. And last but not least, if you want to write letters back home while you're in the field, that's always a nice way to just have a record of your experience and also keep in touch with family members back home. And so if you're interested, make sure you bring stamped envelopes with you and letter writing supplies on the course itself so that you can send those letters back home.
This is Sarah again. So physical conditioning and getting ready for your course. I would say a lot of this is going to depend on what your current physical condition is. If you're already an athlete and you're playing spring soccer, that might be enough. But backpacks are heavy. They require long days in the mountains, require a lot of endurance. So I would think about, what is the thing that I'm missing? Maybe I am playing soccer in the spring or playing softball in the spring, but really what I want to do is do some weight training and then go on some longer hikes or longer runs. Whatever you do, obviously try to make it fun. And the reason that this is important is it mostly gives people confidence going into the course. If they already start the course feeling unprepared, you're just like starting behind the 8 ball. So if students can feel like, oh, I did all this work, I'm prepared and I'm ready, it just helps them like have a better attitude at the start. Because when the hiking day ends, there's still hours of work to be done. There's setting up tents, there's cooking dinner, there's getting water, there's taking care of yourself and taking care of your peers.
Great. So the group will be supervised by the Beckett Chimney Corners leader, Amy, during their orientation and debrief here at camp and on your travel days to and from Alaska and the NOLS headquarters. And during that time, the group might be given some free time that would probably take place either in Anchorage itself or in the airport on your travel days. And so when we have group free time, there are some set rules that we have in place. With that, the first is that participants always have to be in groups of 4 or more. And so with your group, that's great because it means you get to be together all the time, which is nice. Also, Amy, your camp leader, will set up designated boundaries. So for instance, in an airport, it might mean just staying in that particular wing of the airport, or in Anchorage itself, it might mean staying on that city block or 2. Amy will also set a specific meeting time and location for the group to meet up in. And then also all of the participants will have ID cards with them that have phone numbers for us here at camp, a phone number to get in touch with Amy, also numbers for NOLS and for your bed and breakfast in Anchorage. So if you were to get separated from the group for some reason, you'd have a way to get in touch with any of those people. And Ash, do you want to talk a little bit about supervision on the course itself?
Yeah, great. On the course itself, the 2 instructors that you'll have will be with you all at all times. In camp, you can see this slide is setting up what looks like a kitchen tarp. You are 100 yards away to where you have your sleeping tents set up, and you're able to be in that kitchen or by your tents as long as you're with 4 people. So that's a nice continuity with your in-town policies. But the instructors are going to be hiking with you each day, 1 per group, and then they're with you at camp as well. Their tents will be with your tents, and their cooking tarp will be with your cooking tarp.
Great.
Good. So we have mentioned her name several times throughout the presentation. Your trip leader's name is Amy Coburn. So she's the Beckett Chimney Corners YMCA trip leader. And we are planning to send out her profile this week, so you can learn a little bit more about her. You can expect that towards the end of the week. But on this program, it really has a shared leadership model. And the way that that breaks down is that when you arrive at camp, parents and participants on the program will meet Amy. She's going to be the primary leader for the group during the time at camp and also on your way out to Alaska until you meet up with your NOLS instructors. And once you arrive in Alaska and meet your NOLS instructors, they become the primary leaders on the program because they really have the expertise in wilderness expedition. And Amy is really going to play more of a support role. So she's going through the course with you, has not done this before as well, but really provides, that support for campers throughout the program, but also helps to bring a bit of the camp experience into the NOLS experience. But just a little bit about her qualifications and general qualifications for that specific role on the program. She is certified in wilderness first aid and CPR. And we specifically chose her because we like that she does not come from one of the specific camps. So she is actually from the Berkshire Outdoor Center, but knows a lot about both Chimney and Beckett. So we like that it's kind of a neutral zone. And she has wonderful experience, a lot of experience working with teenagers and youth in general, and a lot of outdoor experience as well. So she is very excited, and we'll pass on more information about her at the end of the week. And I will pass it over to Ashley. If you want to talk a little bit about NOLS instructors' qualifications, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, you have 2 NOLS instructors on this course. I know the course leader very well, Tim, and then Manya is the number 2. And Tim was really excited about this course and actually asked Sarah specifically to work this. I think he works really well with this age group, and he knows our area well. He led a 30-day backpacking trip in an area close to this last year. And we really are excited for that team. Their certifications, they have a wilderness first responder, which is the 80-hour, kind of the enhanced version of wilderness first aid. And they all have taken an instructor course. They're familiar with all of our protocols. And so, like we've said, their role on the course is really very supportive, learning when they can give you the reins, kind of let you try and fail if you need to, and then also be that backstop of safety ultimately. And that's really their role out there.
Nice. So communication for this program works differently from the in-camp experience, and it's also different from what you might have experienced if you did a travel and service program last summer. And that's just because the group will be in such a remote setting during the course itself. So I'm going to kind of break this down into 2 parts. The first part that I'll be talking about has to do with your time in camp and when you will be traveling out to the NOLS headquarters. And then the second part is while you're on the course itself. Beckett Chimney Corners will be in touch with family members with email updates when the group lands in Anchorage and when they return back to the East Coast at the end of the program. If a participant were to get sick or injured while at camp or while traveling out to Anchorage, camp will be in touch with you. One thing that is very different is that we do allow NOLS participants to bring their cell phones with them to camp, but I will say there are a lot of restrictions around that cell phone use. You won't be allowed to have access to your phone while you're here at camp. We'll store everyone's phones in Alyssa's office while you're here. And you also are not allowed to have your cell phones with you while you're out on the course itself. Really, the cell phone time is for before the course starts while you're still at that bed and breakfast, and then at the end of the course when you get back to the bed and breakfast once everything's wrapped up. Just to make it a little bit easier for participants to give a call home and talk to their family members if they'd like to. So On the course itself, like I said, it's very different from in-camp or travel and service programs in that families will not be getting any updates on the group, and you shouldn't expect to hear from your child at all while they're on the course. Again, you'll hear from them once the course is wrapped up and they're back at their bed and breakfast. And so, Ashley, could you talk a little bit more just about while the group is on the course itself, if there's anything else that you want to add?
Sure, and I'll let Sarah chime in as well. But they, just so folks know, they do have, the instructors do have a satellite phone, and they have a emergency locator beacons as well. But they only use that communication if they need to get in touch with an emergency or they have a question from the field.
Additionally, if there is an emergency at home and like a death in the family or something that you feel merits contacting your student in the field, you can contact either NOLS Custom Education or NOLS Alaska. And I would just try either until you get someone. All communication, if that were to be the case, we would have to fly in an airplane and look for the group. So we're not willing to do that unless we, deem it a real emergency. So like a dog dying doesn't qualify.
Sorry. Yeah.
Great. So we've mentioned it a few times throughout this presentation that this program requires a high level of maturity. It's very different from the travel programs and also from the in-camp experience. And these trips can be very physically and mentally taxing. So they're definitely challenging. And when we think about behavioral issues on program, it's not just a matter of interrupting a group dynamic or a trip experience. It really can be an issue of safety on the program, which is why we take it so seriously. So all of the non-negotiable rules that participants should be accustomed to from having gone on the travel programs do apply to these programs as well. Very quickly, those are 5 things that we have that if they were to happen once on a program, it means an immediate send home from the program. So that's any drinking alcohol, any smoking of anything, including e-cigarettes, anything that's additionally illegal for your age group, and any sexual activity on the program, and then we call this like breaking of the supervision contract, which really Amy would talk to you about that. But that's really wandering away from the group. As we mentioned a bunch throughout this program in terms of supervision, it's very important that you are staying in your groups of 4, either on the program once you're out in the field, but also throughout the rest of the program as well. So again, those are 5 things that would just mean an immediate send home. But then outside of that, this program really does require a high level of maturity. If there's behavioral issues that are coming up on the program, we're definitely going to have one of the leaders talk to you about it. We want to be fair, but also firm, because as I mentioned, it's not just about group dynamic issues, it's also potentially a safety issue. And we'll definitely also pass it back to NOLS again, just to talk a little bit about your behavior expectations once they're out in the field.
Yeah, that all sounds great, and we're in line with that. And the instructors have a behavioral document. They sort of have thresholds for, okay, this is when we talk to this student, this is when we have a written performance evaluation with this student, and if things aren't changing, it might have a 3-day, you have these 3 days to change these behaviors. And we do our best to get in touch with parents, get in touch with the camp, and make sure everyone's on the same page, that there's no surprises, and how can we best coach people if there are behavior issues. But typically it doesn't happen, but our instructors are prepared for that. And the send home process is tough. You've got to literally wait till you're at an airstrip where our bush pilot can get you out. So it's quite a process to get out, and the best thing we can do is keep people in the field. So we really try and manage things in the field.
Nice. So your program tuition and your gear deposit covers all expenses on this program, so you don't need any additional spending money if you don't want to. I think I forgot to mention earlier, so your $300 gear deposit Again, is just when you get to NOLS, if you decide you'd like to rent anything from them, that's what that money is for. Or if you'd like to purchase anything from the NOLS outfitting department. And any funds that you don't use are returned to families at the end of the summer. So you will get that back if you don't spend those funds. But most campers do like to have some personal spending money on the programs just for snacks or gifts and souvenirs. Your opportunities for spending money will definitely be very limited on this program. If you would like to spend money, it's really just limited to your time in the airport when you're in Anchorage or when you're at the NOLS outfitting department. So with that in mind, if you would like to bring spending money, we recommend bringing no more than $200. And we typically advise families to bring it in 2 different forms. So usually about $60 in cash and about $140 on a debit card. And with that debit card for the participants, you want to make sure that you know the PIN number and understand how to use it. And also it's good to know that you are responsible for carrying your own spending money on the program. Sometimes it comes up where someone's debit card isn't working for some reason. And if that's the case, Amy, your camp leader, will have a camp issued credit card and she can withdraw funds for you. But before we ever do that, we always call parents first and get parental permission, and we ask parents to specify an amount that you would like the leader to pass along to your child. And often there's a small ATM or credit card fee connected to that transaction, and how that works is just at the end of the summer we would send a bill to families.
Great. So this is an awesome slide as well. Mike Meekin, our pilot who'll be doing the re-rations, is in the center of the photo and really keeps all of our courses humming in that Talkeetna area and beyond in the Chugach. So this is the group from last year. You can see they have their little holsters, and the bear spray are in those the scat holsters that a lot of the students are wearing in the photo. So as far as evacuations in healthcare in general, what reaches the level of needing to be evacuated? Obviously serious injuries or something where you can't continue for whatever reason. And that is our best mode. Is there are quite a few airstrips out there. Some are where he can get with a smaller plane called a Super Cub. And so the instructors would call from the field and say, we need an evac, and we would call the pilot, Mike Meekin, and he would, do his weather dependent. They'd coordinate where to pick up and take somebody out. He would fly them back to his hangar, which is not, about a 30-minute or less flight from most of this course area. And then we would go pick up the student, and bring you to a local hospital. If it was more serious and needed more of a rapid evacuation, we do have helicopters in the area that can get people out and take them directly to hospitals if they need to. So we decide that based on the type of call we get from the instructors. And we certainly will keep parents informed. Once folks are coming out of the field, the parents and the camp will know for sure, as well as NOLS custom education.
Great, thanks. And just a clarification, I think in the past for families that have been on a TSP program, anytime there's been a health issue on one of our programs, you always hear directly from camp. That's where this program differs a little bit because we're partnered with NOLS. That communication is going to come directly from NOLS. We don't want it to have to go through camp before getting to you because we want you to have up-to-date, very quick information if there were to be some kind of health issue. NOLS at the same time will keep us in the loop, so we will know what's going on, but you will be directly working with NOLS on that.
Great. Okay. And food, we've talked about a little bit, but this is the same instructor as that previous photo. We certainly take allergies and dietary restrictions seriously, and you all have that in your paperwork. And our rations room is able to accommodate most allergies and dietary restrictions, and they'll actually build the rations around what you all need in the field. And so sometimes we'll have a whole cook group that is gluten-free if we need to, and that type of thing. The meals themselves, much of the day when you're not hiking, it's very communal. You're all kind of helping each other, and you could see under a tarp. It's often raining. You're working, and it's usually a highlight, and people are learning to cook for the first time sometimes. So yeah, look forward to that for sure.
For transportation, we contract with a local bus company called Dufour that will take the participants from camp to the airport. And then this year we are about to send out the flight itinerary, so you will have that soon. The group is flying with Sun Country up to Alaska. So they're flying from Boston to Anchorage, and you'll have the itinerary shortly. Sometimes families want to sign up for frequent flyer miles, which you are welcome to do. I just suggest that you go to the airline website. You can look up their program there. And then if you do get a number, you can send that directly to either myself or Becky, and we can pass it on to our travel agent. If that's something you want to do, I'd suggest doing it probably in the next couple of weeks once you actually receive the flight itinerary, just so we can have enough time to get it logged in with the travel agent. I believe that's all we have for transportation.
Great. And so your group will spend a few days together at camp before and after the NOLS course. And so your group's check-in is on June 24th at 2 p.m. and your checkout is on July 21st at 10 a.m. We differ a little bit from the in-camp process in that, as you just heard, there's a specific time for the check-in and the checkout. And those always take place in the sign barn at Chimney Corners Camp, which is across the street from the administration building. So at the check-in, which again is at 2 p.m., we'll give a brief presentation and then you'll say your goodbyes and the group will jump right into their orientation. And so during that time, you'll spend a lot of time doing different icebreaker games and team building activities. You might work on a group contract together. It's just some time to just get to know one another and get ready for your course. And then at the end of the program, when you come back to camp, you'll spend again a few days just debriefing your experience all together. And then your group will also put together a photo slideshow that you'll present to your families at the group checkout.
Great. All right, so now we are going to open it up to questions. So if you find the chat box over on the right-hand side of your screen, you can just type any questions that you have in there, and we'll just give it a couple minutes so you can think of anything you have, and we will just answer them in the order that we receive them. And just while we wait for any questions to come in, I wanted to let you all know that we did record this presentation. So I know it covered a lot of information, and I will send out the link in the next couple of days so that you can review it or share it with any family members that were not able to attend. All right, so a question that if I could pass this on to NOLS, what kind of close animal encounters have you had?
Well, great question. I would say last year we had bears that kind of a mom and a cub that came close to a group that was hiking, and the group kind of shouldered up together with their instructor. And basically, our policies worked. You know, every student took their bear spray out. Every instructor had their bear spray out, and they were pointing the bear spray and waving their hands and yelling, and were an active deterrent. And the bear decided to move on. That was probably, they were I think about 40 to 50 yards away from the bear. So that was kind of the most recent close encounter, but we were really pleased with how things worked.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess if there are not any other questions, that's fine. If you do have any questions that come up just after you've sort of let all this information sink in, just feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. I've put our contact information up here. You can, of course, also go to our website. But thank you so much for joining tonight. We're really excited for the program, and we'll be in touch in the next month, just starting to feed you more information. As I mentioned, information about Amy, your trip leader, also the flight itinerary, and a nice little itinerary overview for you. So thank you, and enjoy your evening.
And if I could quickly give a big thank you to everybody at NOLS who tuned in and helped us with this presentation. We really appreciate it. It makes it so much better to have you here. So thank you again so much.
There is a question from Shannon about how girls should handle having their periods on courses.
Yeah.
This is something that we know most girls are worried about. They should bring whatever they're comfortable using, tampons or pads, and bring just a little extra more than normal, just so they can feel comfortable that they have enough. Some freezer Ziploc bags are great for keeping that stuff dry in the field. And then when they're issuing their equipment, often they're given like a small ditty bag that you can't see through, like a small nylon bag that they can keep that stuff in. We also have a document that should be on your dashboard. And I think we changed the name. It used to be like Women's Medical Concerns, and I think we added like Hygiene for Men, and now it maybe is just called like a hygiene document. But there is a female instructor on this course, and she will go over all of that with all of the female students. So they are not expected to just like either already know or figure it out on their own. Shanna, did that answer your question?
Oh, I think Shannon had a follow-up question just about will the group, oh yes, she said yes, thank you. And then she just had a follow-up question about if the group will be at Chimney or Beckett.
So the group will start out at, I don't remember which, I think they start at Chimney. So for their orientation, they'll be here at Chimney, and then for their debrief, they'll be over at Camp Beckett, just so everybody gets a chance at each camp.
Great. All right. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Reach out if you have questions. Thank you, NOLS, for joining, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.